The Kandahar night pressed down heavy as wet concrete. Inside a sandbag shelter, 3 insurgents hunched low, their rifles shaking in unsteady hands. Through a crackling radio, a voice whispered, "Someone's out there hunting us." A single shot shattered the silence. One man fell instantly. On the ridge above, a figure lay still in desert camouflage, her breath calm and steady. Her eyes were cold as forged steel. When 90 brothers died betrayed, she stopped waiting for anyone's orders. This is the tale of a ghost who became justice. Dawn crept gray over the ruins of Outpost Eagle's Nest. Master Sergeant Sarah Reynolds walked among the scattered wreckage of what had been her world just 12 hours before. 90 brothers and sisters, 90 tags she now pulled from burned canvas and twisted metal, setting them in perfect lines across the scorched ground. She didn't cry. Tears were a currency she'd long abandoned. Somewhere between her 3rd deployment and her first confirmed kill at 1-800 meters, the last surviving member of Delta Force knelt beside the rough memorial, her fingers tracing each name like raised letters in stone. Martinez, Chen, O'Connor, Daniels, everyone. A voice gone silent, a laugh smothered, a story cut short. Beneath a collapsed tent, she found her rifle case somehow untouched. She cleaned the Macmillan TAC-50 with ritual care, aligning the scope with movements so precise they seemed mechanical. One strand of dark hair slipped onto the lens. She plucked it away with tweezers, hands unshaken as bedrock. On her wrist, beneath a torn sleeve, a black ink tattoo curled, the serpent devouring its tail. The number 90 etched at its heart. She'd marked it 3 weeks earlier after a nightmare she couldn't escape. Now it felt like prophecy. Memory returned unbidden. 2 nights before the slaughter, sitting around a barrel fire with her team, someone had smuggled in real coffee, passing the thermos like sacred wine. Commander Jackson Hayes watched her through the flicker of flames, his face half light, half night. "Ghost Hawk," he'd said, using the name they gave her after she'd held position for 18 hours straight without moving, breathing, waiting for one perfect shot. "You're the best we have, you know that, right?" She'd laughed, uneasy with praise. "I just pull triggers, sir." "No," he said, eyes firm. "Your focus itself, pure will. If I ever go down out here, I want you to be the one who hunts them for me." "Promise?" She'd nodded, thinking it was just another oath whispered before dawn battles to feel untouchable. Now, kneeling in ashes, she breathed to the wind. "I promise all of you. I promise." The wind shifted, carrying the bitter smell of cordite and something else. Jet fuel. Wrong kind. Not listed on their supply records. She rose slowly, every muscle wound tight, and approached the comms gear. Most of it was melted slag, but one backup radio's casing was cracked, yet its heart survived. She hooked it to a portable battery salvaged from a ruined Humvee. Static hissed, then thinned out. Archived transmissions, encrypted but reachable for anyone who knew Delta Force's rotating codes. She did. Buried in digital noise, she found it. A voice she didn't know, speaking English using call signs locked far above top-secret clearance. "Package delivered. 90 confirmed. Proceed to extraction point Tango 7. Sarah's blood turned to ice water. The strike had been surgical, too clean, too informed. Someone had handed the enemy their routes, their shifts, their coordinates. Someone wearing the same flag she wore. She leaned back on her heels, radio quiet except for her own breath. When she opened her eyes again, they carried something new. Cold, patient, utterly without mercy. For 3 days, Sarah worked in the shadows of the ruined base, invisible to the cleanup crews who arrived to catalog the dead. She had always been skilled at melting into the terrain. That was why they'd made her a sniper to begin with. Now, she used that skill to become a true ghost. She rebuilt the communications intercept rig piece by piece, cannibalizing parts from 5 destroyed units. The backup server had survived, its armored case buried under rubble. Inside it, she found 6 months of encrypted traffic. She worked nights translating and cross-referencing, stitching together a map of betrayal. The pattern rose like bones out of sand. Delta Force's mission parameters had been leaked 3 times in the past 4 months. Each time insurgents had waited, each time casualties had been heavy. But this final strike had been meant for total annihilation. The encryption key that had been broken was a rotating code changed weekly, known only to Delta leadership and one external coordinator at Central Command. She pulled the personnel file. Colonel William Donovan, Intelligence Liaison, 23 years service, highly decorated. Then she saw the date. Colonel Donovan had died in a helicopter crash 14 months earlier. Someone had been using a dead man's credentials. Someone with access to the deepest tiers of military intelligence. Someone who could hide inside the system like a virus. She keyed into the archived voice recordings using Donovan's stolen signature as a filter. Buried in a routine status report, a voice appeared on an open mic. Male, American. A distinctive vocal fry on certain syllables, particularly the sibilant S sounds, suggesting an old jaw injury. She ran it through biometric analysis software she had no authorization to use. 3 matches in the database. 2 retired. 1 active duty at the Pentagon. Colonel Victor Reeves, logistics officer responsible for supply routes and comms infrastructure. The perfect position to betray from, the perfect cover. Sarah pulled his photo. Clean-cut, square jaw. Eyes that looked sincere in every official portrait. She memorized that face the way she memorized wind speed calculations and bullet drop charts. She packed what little gear she had. Her TAC-50 rifle, 3 magazines of 50 BMG rounds with Raufoss Mk211 armor-piercing tips, and the Ka-Bar knife her father gave her before her first deployment. She took one of the name tags from the memorial. Martinez, first to die. She slipped it into her breast pocket over her heart. As she prepared to leave, her improvised radio crackled alive. She froze. Enemy chatter translated automatically by the software. The Americans speak of a ghost, a woman who kills from distances we cannot see. Another voice, younger, trembling. Who is hunting us now? A third, the commander. Find her. Kill her, or she will kill us all. Sarah allowed the smallest smile. Good. Let them be afraid. Let them look over their shoulders. Let them know what her 90 felt in their last moments. But fear alone would not satisfy. She wanted justice. She wanted the man who sold out Delta Force to face what he'd done. Before she left the base, she stopped at the memorial one last time. She knelt and pressed her forehead to the ground where the name tags lay. "I'm not doing this for revenge," she whispered. "Revenge is personal. This is bigger. This is for the next team and the one after that. So they know betrayal has a price. So they know someone's watching." She slung her rifle and walked into the desert dark. Behind her, one name tag lay apart from the rest, placed with deliberate care. It read, Reeves, not a tag from Delta Force. She had made it herself. It was a promise. 6 days, 11 targets. Each target was a knot in the web that had led to Delta Force's destruction. Sarah moved through the Hindu Kush mountains like water, reshaping to fit each terrain. She was boulder and shadow, dust and wind. She was the thing that didn't register in peripheral vision until it was far too late. The first had been a local insurgent commander who coordinated the ambush, Abdul Kazim, known as the Desert Devil. A former Spetsnaz operative who'd switched sides after the Soviet collapse. Sarah had tracked him to a Pashtun village where He believed himself untouchable, surrounded by loyalists. She took him at 1,650 meters while he prayed at dawn, the call to prayer masking the sound of her round. One moment prostrate before God, the next prostrate forever. She left Martinez's tag on his chest. The second and third were brothers, the Farouk siblings. Hassan, an MIT-educated electronics genius, and Omar, a former Halliburton engineer. Together, they had designed the precision explosives that breached Eagle's Nest's reinforced walls. Sarah found them in a compound testing detonators. She watched for 72 hours, studying their patterns, their guards, their moments of vulnerability. Through her scope, she saw Omar call his family, showing pictures of his children to his brother. For a moment, her finger hesitated on the trigger. Then she noticed what they were building. Not just any IEDs, but devices designed specifically for a school. Children's backpacks modified to carry explosives. Blueprints of an American school in Kandahar spread across their workbench. She waited until their attention was on their work, then sent them to join what they built. Chen's and O'Connor's tags marked them. By the fifth kill, the networks buzzed with panic. By the eighth, they posted guards at night and scanned ridgelines with thermal optics. It didn't matter. She'd been trained by the best. She knew how to mask heat signatures, move in the margins of sensor sweeps, make herself invisible by being exactly where no one expected. The ninth was the hardest. A kid maybe 16, recruited as a spotter. She watched him 2 hours through her scope, saw his hands shake lighting a cigarette, saw the photo of a woman he'd checked in his pocket. But he'd been calling coordinates while her brothers burned. The shot was clean, merciful. Daniel's tag marked him. Each kill was a meditation. Breathe in. Observe. Calculate wind, distance, temperature, humidity. Breathe out halfway. Hold. The slice between heartbeats when the world goes perfectly still. Squeeze, never pull. Squeeze like you're holding something precious you won't break. In that perfect calm, she whispered a name. One of the 90, a prayer, and a farewell. The 11th target was different. One of Reeves's contacts, an American contractor who'd facilitated the traitors' communications with the insurgents. He'd known it was coming. He'd helped plan it. She found him in a fortified compound surrounded by guards who thought walls would save them. She didn't take the shot right away. She waited until night, until the guards relaxed and he came out to smoke on a balcony. Then she sent her message. 900 meters through the dark. The tag she left read simply, Delta 90. That 11th kill had consequences. The contractor's allies tracked her firing position from the muzzle flash. She'd let them see it. They set a trap, a building rigged with enough explosives to level a city block. Sarah saw the obvious bait, the two perfect ambush positions, the way they herded her with false radio chatter. So she let them think they'd won. She entered the building just before dawn, made noise on the second floor, let them catch her shadow in the window, heard their excited radio calls as they converged, certain of victory. Then she slipped down to the basement, found the fuel drums stacked for their vehicles, and opened every valve before walking out the back, across the compound wall, and taking position 400 meters away. When the first insurgent kicked in the second-floor door, his weapon sparked and the fumes needed no more. The explosion painted the pre-dawn sky like a second sun, orange and furious. Sarah watched through her scope, face unreadable as the building became a pillar of flame. 12 more enemies gone in a single inferno. Collateral justice. When the fire died enough to approach, she walked through the rubble, wild face streaked with ash and dirt, eyes reflecting the embers. She looked like a demon. She looked like an angel. She looked like judgment made flesh. In the ashes, she laid down 12 more name tags. Then she turned east toward the Pentagon, toward Victor Reeves. But first, she needed proof beyond her own testimony. The world would need to know the truth. She found it in what remained of the insurgents' command post. A laptop, partially melted but with an intact hard drive. Inside it, emails between the insurgents and a Pentagon address, using Colonel Donovan's credentials. Details of Operation Lion's Mane, a black market weapons deal that had funded Reeves' offshore accounts. Sarah encrypted the data and transmitted it to the one journalist she'd met along the way, Catherine Wilson, the CNN reporter she'd rescued from captivity 2 days earlier. A backup, in case she didn't make it back. Then she received word from her only remaining contact in the military, General Frank Martinez, a Gulf War veteran who'd been her first commander. Reeves was holding an emergency briefing at the Pentagon in 48 hours. The Ghost had one final hunt to complete. The Pentagon sat like a fortress in the morning light, 5 concentric rings of power and secrets. Inside, men and women in uniform went through their routines, drinking bad coffee, filing reports, making the small decisions that keep a war machine running. In the central briefing room, General Frank Martinez stood silently at the back as Colonel Victor Reeves addressed the gathered officers and intelligence analysts. Reeves's voice was confident, his posture perfect in his dress uniform adorned with combat ribbons and medals. The insurgent cell responsible for the Eagle's Nest massacre has been neutralized, Reeves said. Our assets in the region report at least 11 confirmed kills of high-value targets, plus 12 more in an explosion of unknown origin. A murmur ran through the room. Martinez's face remained impassive. However, Reeves continued, we now face a rogue operator. Someone is conducting unauthorized operations in theater. Someone with access to our protocols and encryption. We need to find them before they compromise more assets. The briefing room door opened, and every head turned. Sarah Reynolds stood in the doorway, uniform dusty and torn, face smudged with ash, her blue eyes like chips of Arctic ice. She looked like she'd walked through a war zone. She looked like she'd won. Martinez's jaw tightened slightly, the only sign he'd been expecting this. Reeves froze mid-sentence, his composure cracking for just a millisecond before he regained control. Master Sergeant Reynolds, he said smoothly, you should be in debrief under medical evaluation, not interrupting a classified. Neither should you, sir, Sarah said quietly, her voice controlled and lethal. You shouldn't be anywhere except a cell at Leavenworth. She crossed the room in 3 strides and tossed a small USB drive onto the polished table. It skittered to a stop before Martinez, who picked it up deliberately. That's 11 hours of intercepted communications, she said. Encrypted with Donovan's stolen credentials. Voice analysis matches someone in this room. Would you like me to play it? Or should I just point? This is a serious accusation, Master Sergeant, Martinez said, his expression unreadable as he inserted the drive into his laptop. It's not an accusation, sir. It's evidence. Reeves rose slowly, chair scraping. General, surely you're not going to listen to this. She's clearly traumatized, suffering survivor's guilt. She needs psychiatric evaluation, not— Sit down, Colonel, Martinez said quietly. Sir, I said sit down. Martinez typed commands, entering his security clearance. The room's speakers crackled to life. Reeves's voice filled the room, thin and unmistakable through the static. Package delivered, 90 confirmed. Proceed to extraction point, Tango 7. Payment in full as agreed. Blood drained from Reeves's face. Martinez let the recording play 30 more seconds. Details of bank transfers, future shipments, timetables for operations. Then stopped it and looked at Reeves as a man might inspect something found on his shoe. MPs, he said softly into his comm. Conference room A. Now. Sir, I can explain, Reeves began, his hand moving toward his sidearm. You'll have plenty of time to explain at your court-martial, Martinez replied, his own weapon already drawn and aimed at Reeves's chest. Before they execute you for treason. Reeves's eyes darted around the room, calculating. Then his gaze settled on Sarah, hatred burning in his eyes. You have no idea what you've done, he spat. The deals I made kept this country safe. The money-funded operations Congress would never approve. I made the hard choices. You chose to kill 90 Americans, Sarah replied evenly. You chose wrong. The military police entered and cuffed Victor Reeves. As they led him away, Sarah stood perfectly still, her face unreadable. She had hunted for justice, not vengeance. She'd brought evidence, not only bullets. Martinez turned to her as they led Reeves away. You went outside the chain of command, Master Sergeant. Yes, sir. You conducted unsanctioned operations on foreign soil. Yes, sir. Martinez studied her a long moment, then said softly, Justice will be done for all 90. Yes, sir. It already has been. The memorial service took place at dawn, because that is when warriors say goodbye. The parade ground had been prepared with military precision. 90 empty chairs in perfect rows, each with a name placard, each facing a podium draped with the flag. But the chairs were empty. They were for the fallen, not the living. Sarah knelt in the center of the formation, still in her cleaned but unpressed combat uniform. Around her, in a wide circle, she had arranged the 90 name tags she had carried through mountains and desert, each placed exactly 2 feet from the next, a constellation of the dead. She moved from tag to tag, laying a hand on each and whispering the name. Not just the name on the placard, but the full name, the nickname, the small story. Martinez, who could fix any engine blindfolded. Chen, who sang off-key with such joy no one minded. O'Connor, who sent half her paycheck home to her mother in Boston. Daniels, who wanted to be a teacher when his tour ended. 90 names, 90 stories, 90 futures stolen. The sun crested the horizon and painted everything gold. The wind tangled her hair. Then the tears finally began to fall. Behind her, General Martinez stood at attention, hand raised in salute. He'd waited 20 minutes for her to notice, but he did not move or speak. This moment belonged to her and to them. Behind Martinez, the entire base had turned out. Hundreds of soldiers in silent formation. They'd heard the stories. They knew what she'd done and why. In the military, there are rules about going rogue, regulations, protocols, chains of command, but there are older laws written in blood and brotherhood. You do not abandon your own. You do not let betrayal go unanswered. You do not let good men and women die unavenged. Sarah had walked the edge of those rules. Perhaps she'd crossed them. But everyone standing in that dawn light understood some debts can only be paid in the currency of action. When she finished the last name, Hayes, the commander who made her promise by the fire, she remained kneeling, hands pressed to the ground as if she could reach through the earth to where they'd gone. Martinez finally stepped forward, his footsteps deliberate to give her time to compose herself. She rose slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand in a gesture almost childlike. Martinez held a folded flag, the triangle of stars and stripes creased with ceremonial precision. He extended it to her. For Delta Force, he said simply, with honor and gratitude. She took the flag in both hands and cradled it to her chest. It felt heavier than she expected, maybe the weight of everything it represented. They were the best of us, she whispered. They were, Martinez agreed. But so are you, Master Sergeant. Don't forget that. She looked at him and saw something she hadn't expected. Pride. Not for what she'd done, but for who she was. For the line she'd walked between justice and vengeance, between mission and murder, and somehow kept her soul intact. What happens now, sir? She asked. Martinez paused. Officially, you're being reassigned. Unofficially, there's a file on my desk, a new unit being formed. What are they calling it? Phantom Division, he said. Off-book operations. The missions no one else can handle. The people no one else can touch. And unofficially, a shadow of a smile touched his lips. I never had this conversation. You were never here. Delta Force was avenged by forces unknown. The war goes on. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding. Some things belonged in the light, others in shadow. The world needed both. Permission to keep these, sir, she asked, gesturing to the name tags. Granted, they're yours now. Carry them well. She gathered them carefully, one by one, placing them into a leather pouch she'd crafted from a torn equipment strap. They clinked softly like wind chimes in a place where no wind ever blew. As she rose, the sun cleared the horizon, and across the parade ground, someone began to sing, quietly at first, then stronger. Amazing Grace. More voices joined until hundreds of soldiers sang for 90 fallen souls and for the one ghost who made sure they'd never be forgotten. Sarah closed her eyes and let the sound wash through her. When she opened them again, she was smiling. A year later, General Martinez sat in his office, the morning heat pressing at the windows. On his desk lay a file stamped with clearance levels that didn't officially exist. Operation Silent Oath. He opened it with the care of a man handling scripture. Inside was a single page. Status: deployed. Location: classified attached. A black and white photograph, slightly grainy. Sarah Reynolds in full combat gear, rifle slung across her back, looking straight at the camera. A faint smile touched her lips, not the smile of someone who'd lost everything, but of someone who'd found something new. Purpose. Martinez closed the file and locked it in his safe. Some operations you didn't track, some soldiers you didn't monitor. You just pointed them toward the dark and trusted they'd know which shadows to hunt. 6 months earlier, he'd received one message from her. No words, just a photograph. A ridgeline at sunset, a lone figure silhouetted against crimson light. He understood. She was still out there, still watching, still guarding those who wore the uniform and didn't know her name. Somewhere in the mountains between Afghanistan and Pakistan, Sarah walked a goat path that hadn't existed on any map since ancient times. The afternoon sun warmed her shoulders. Her rifle rested easy on her back. In her pocket, 90 name tags clicked together like prayer beads. She reached a ridge and paused, looking back over the land she'd crossed. Beyond those mountains, people slept safe because someone like her walked the world's edge. She'd made peace with it, not the peace of forgetting, but the harder peace of purpose. She had lost 90, but saved thousands more by ensuring traders knew someone was always watching. Someone would always come. She turned west toward the descending sun, painting the sky in colors without names. Her hair caught the wind, wild and free. Her smile was small but real, the smile of someone who'd walked through fire and come out scarred but unbroken. Some ghosts never vanish. They wait on the ridge, ready when darkness rises. When betrayal demands an answer. When someone must stand because no one else will. If you were alone, if no one was watching, would you still do the right thing? Tell your story in the comments. Delta 90. Never forgotten.